and welcome to GameSec. It's once again time to check out some 2D games for modern platforms because 2D games are freaking awesome. And yes, even though the PlayStation 5 is like many years old now, I'm still including the PS4 in this episode because, well, still actively being supported. Though this first game certainly wishes it was on a certain older, crappier platform. This is RZ from CDI Software. CDI? It's available for the Switch, PlayStation 4 and 5, the Xbox Series X and S, and the impressive and celebrated Microsoft Windows operating system on PC. I'm playing on the Nintendo Switch here, but all versions should be basically identical. This is a side-scrolling action-adventure platformer where you control a girl named RZ. Yes, it's generally a Metroidvania, but it doesn't feature a map. Basically, evil was trapped and now it escaped because if it hadn't, there wouldn't be a game, so there you go. You have to take care of the evil baddies that are scattered around. During my incredibly deep research about this game on Wikipedia, I discovered that this is a spiritual sequel to the Zelda CDI games. Remember those and their wacky animations that were so bad that they were charming? Yeah, this game has very similar animations whenever you interact with most characters. There is a lot of it.
Any news?
The forces of evil underestimated your prowess. I believe they may fear you.
Ha! Well, they can join the club!
Actually, I knew all of this going in. Yes, even without checking Wikipedia first, if you can believe that. Turns out I know some of the people who helped make this game. So, having said that, I'll just end this unbiased review by saying that this is the best game ever and that you should buy 18 copies on each platform today. Actually, make that 19. Okay, I'm just kidding about that last part. 18 is fine. So RZ can jump and slash with her sword. She eventually gets items that she can use like bombs, which are activated with the X button on the Switch, or magic that she can use with the A button and use switch magics with the R button. Enemies that shoot projectiles are a huge annoyance early in the game. Thankfully, one of the first things you find lets you deflect enemy projectiles with the L button. Like most adventure platformers, you can't go everywhere right off the bat. You need to find things to unlock your way forward in many places. For example, red bricks can be removed with red magic and blue bricks can be removed with blue magic. But in order to get these magics, usually you need to help someone first and then they'll give you stuff. That's right, this game is largely about fetch quests. I would say that most of these are not optional, it's just how you need to proceed through most of the game. That said, you'll be revisiting each area more than once for sure. The gameplay feels quite solid and mostly fair. In the normal mode, you don't get any health back unless you exit a stage, but the easy mode has enemies drop health items for you. I haven't tried the easy mode, I only play games on normal, like a true champion. Anyway, you don't really need the health items. Yes, you will die, probably a lot in some areas, but these areas are never unfair. You'll start over at the place you entered the current screen, like a doorway or screen change or whatever. Some of the screens that are quite large feature a checkpoint, which is a good idea, especially early on. Eventually, you get a double jump, and like any game, that always makes the gameplay feel even better. You'll need to collect lots of things to open up the barriers. You also have an expanding town with places and people to visit. It's about a 4-hour game or so, a little longer if you want to find everything. That might seem short to a lot of people, but I'm good with it. The graphics feature some nice sprite work with good animation. But the big star during gameplay are the backgrounds. In fact, some of the art style is similar to those Zelda CDI games, and that might be because they have one of those games' artists. The animated cutscenes are also outstanding, even though they're incredibly cheesy. I never skip these animations unless I've seen them like 3 or 4 times already, at least. It's so rare to see anything like this these days.
Don't look so blue, princess!
The music is also pretty good, sometimes even extremely good. So, is there anything that this game gets wrong? Well, yeah, I do have some nitpicks. First, I found it extremely tough to jump from ladder to ladder. It's incredibly difficult to do. Fortunately, you don't really need to do it much, so this is a very minor complaint. Also, when switching between items like from the bomb to the lamp or whatever, you need to pause the game and go into the screen to select them and then exit the screen. I wish I could just fast cycle through my items with the right analog stick, that would be awesome. Next, you can't jump down from a platform, you can only go down by going off the edge. This is likely because it tries to be like the 2 Zelda CDI side-scrollers which use up to jump. There's no way to jump down through a platform with those kind of controls. In fact, you can even select classic controls here where up jumps if you hate yourself. Also, down plus jump is used for evading in this game, but that's a move I rarely use. There are also a couple of areas where the background art is spaced a bit awkwardly, like here. You need to hit the 2 switches to get the fairy to appear, but there's no way you can jump to the middle tree from the other trees. So they had to extend some invisible ground collision beyond the tree to make sure that you could. Who would know to walk off the tree like that? There aren't very many different types of enemies, and the final boss fight might just be the easiest boss fight ever in gaming. Some of the voices could also use some level balancing work. The game's biggest failure, though, is that it's fun. How is this supposed to be an homage to the CDI if it's enjoyable? Sorry, but suspension of disbelief can only go so far. It's like owning a Ford Pinto that doesn't explode, or a Boeing airplane in tip-top shape. Anyway, for real, check this game out. It's only $20 digitally. Unfortunately, it is published by Limited Run Games, even digitally, a company that I consider rather questionable. But the developer does deserve your love, and I think you'd like it. I've had this next game for what feels like forever, but I never featured it on the show. Well, it's time to give it its due. It may be an oldie, but it's definitely a goodie. Check it out. This is Hyper Light Drifter from Heart Machine. It originally came out in 2016. It's on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, Mac, Windows, Linux, iOS, and Android. This is the PlayStation 4 version here. This one is an overhead adventure game. It takes place in a post-apocalyptic world of unknown origins. You play as the exciting Hyper Light Drifter. The intro shows that you were fighting some pretty nasty bad guys and other probably not pleasant things happened. He can slash with his sword and shoot with his gun. You have limited ammo, but it will refill as you slash enemies with your sword. You can also upgrade your weapons and abilities. He also has a dash, and you'll be using this a ton. It does more than simply dash. It also allows him to cross small chasms. You also get to cough pink blood from time to time because that's an attractive thing to see your character do in a video game. In fact, there's lots of pink blood in this, so I'm fairly certain this game takes place on the Klingon homeworld. The fighting is generally pretty good, though it can be crazy tough sometimes. You can try as many times as you'd like though, and some of these situations will take several attempts to get past. There's no dialogue in the game at all. The characters speak to you in images depicting what happened to them. Some characters will give you new places to go on the map. This world is quite big. Each area is pretty large, and then when you get to the edge, it'll fade out and go on to a new area. The game automatically saves pretty much every time it does this, and at other points like just beating an onslaught of enemies. You have a little robot buddy who follows you around, which lets you scan things. This is basically how you interact with anything that needs it. You use him to pick up items, activate doors, warps, and things like that. Overall, the game controls very well, and exploring is incredibly fun. I kept getting sidetracked by new areas to explore instead of thoroughly searching the place I was at, and then I'd have to go back. This is mainly because I play like an idiot. Still, this is a rather nice problem to have if I'm being honest. The game doesn't give you much to go on as you play, and this is clearly intentional. Fortunately, you can warp back to places you've discovered at any time from the map screen, so backtracking isn't as tedious as it otherwise would be. I haven't finished this one yet, but people are reporting it to be about a 10-hour game on average. I really like it when a game doesn't feel the need to be 60 hours or more. There are so many games in this world and only so much time. I really do like this strange world as it's presented here. The graphics use pixel art as you can see, but apply some higher resolution colors on top of that in many areas. Everything looks great and quite unique, and it all feels very desolate. The music is a disaster piece. Literally, that's the composer's handle. It's mostly minimalistic, but it does really fit the game. It consists of synthesized instruments that totally lend themselves to this world. In fact, at times, it almost feels like this game was composed by Vangelis. So, is there anything I can complain about here? Honestly, not much. Perhaps the shops could be less confusing, as I really don't understand what the currency is here. It seems to be overall game progress? Not quite sure. And maybe it could use some sweet scaling and rotation like the Sega CD had. Or maybe some Mode 7 like the Super Nintendo had. Everyone loves those things. Now, my lack of complaints doesn't mean that this game is a 10 out of 10, but it is quite enjoyable and I demand that you play it immediately. Or just, whenever you can. Here's Gunlord X from NG Dev Team. It's on the Switch and PlayStation 4. This is the Switch version. Actually, it was originally an unofficial aftermarket title for the Neo Geo, then later released on the Dreamcast. This port is upgraded from the Dreamcast version and it has some new content. The field of view is also wider, it lacks the occasional flicker from the Neo Geo version, and there's basically no slowdown ever. I covered the Dreamcast version in a previous episode, but in modern times the Switch or the PlayStation 4 version is the one to get. And you should, because it's only $10 or so. If you're not aware, this game is a true homage to Turrican. See, here's Mega Turrican running on the Genesis. Now, here's Gunlord X. Mega Turrican again, and back to Gunlord X. So, you see the similarities, don't you? No? Okay, here's the first Turrican, Gunlord X, Mega Turrican, Super Turrican, Gunlord X, Super Turrican 2, Universal Soldier on the Genesis, the first Turrican, Gunlord X, McDonald's Treasureland Adventure, Mega Turrican, Turrican, Gunlord X, Mega Turrican, Super Turrican, Sonic the Hedgehog, Gunlord X, Turrican, Super Turrican 2, My Old Camcorder, Universal Soldier again, Mega Turrican, and finally back to Gunlord X. Almost all of the Turrican tropes are here, like the wide beam attack for your special, or rolling up into a ball like Metroid. But what's fantastic about this one is that you can also shoot up as well as diagonally up. This is something I always wished I could do in Turrican games. Basically, you roam the gigantic levels to find the exit, defeating a boss or two along the way. Stage 2 is a horizontal shooter stage, which is pretty cool, though it is rather short. There are 7 different weapons that you can collect, and you'll be switching them out and powering them up all the time, as it's pretty tough to avoid getting the icons scattered about. That's perfectly fine though. There are also certain parts of some of the stages that will let you climb on the wall and the ceiling. This game can be quite chaotic, and if you're not careful, it's going to be game over pretty quick. Oh, and I saved the best move for last. That's the Electro Whip thing, which is similar to most Turrican games. You can easily use this by pressing any direction on the right analog stick. It can kill enemies and even weaker enemy fire. It is a lifesaver. It's not as strong as any of your main weapons, but it is so useful that you'll almost want to use it exclusively. It can make defending yourself during boss fights much easier. You have a few continues and you can earn more by collecting a bunch of the giant pink gems. When you die and when you continue, you start over pretty much right where you died. Though if it happened whilst fighting an exciting boss, you'll need to begin that fight again. If you run out of all your lives and continues, then you'll have to restart the entire stage over. The graphics are super nice and extremely colorful, with many layers of scrolling in most areas. If you like things with color, then you'll probably love the way this looks. The music is even better, and it would absolutely fit in a proper Turrican game, but it's outstanding on its own right, and it helps make these humongous levels bearable. About the only complaints that I would have would be the level design. They are just colossal, and that's sometimes exacerbated by how some of the areas are extended for the Switch and PlayStation 4. It can be easy to get lost sometimes, and then you'll need to backtrack. There's no map at all. Fortunately, there's also no time limit. There are the occasional indicators to point you in the right direction though, but you're going to need to explore if you want to find all of those giant pink gems. Oh, and I wish the shooter stage was a bit longer. This was just too cool to have it only last a few minutes. Another couple of minutes on the stage would have been great. Anyway, this game is cheap, so I definitely recommend giving it a go. Alright, I've got 2 more games to show you, and one of them hasn't even been released yet at the time I'm making this video. Though if you're from the future, it probably has been released. Unless you're not very far in the future, because it's not coming out super duper soon or anything. Anyway, first up is a Shantae game, and then we'll get to that one. Here's Shantae and the 7 Sirens from Way Forward. It's on the Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, Mac OS, and even iOS. I'm playing on the PlayStation 4 here. PlayStation 4 Pro, in fact. Can you tell? I mean, doesn't everything seem more professional? I thought I had already covered this game, so I checked on the website, and no, it was the Pirate's Curse. In fact, I've never booted this game up, as I thought I had already played through it. Nope, this one is much newer, originally being released in 2019. Anyway, as you can see, it's a side-scrolling action platformer. That's right, another Metroidvania, and this one has the appropriate map. It plays just like all of the other Shantae games. You attack with your hair. You can buy shampoo and cream to increase the attack strength and speed. In this game, several other half-genies like yourself have been kidnapped, and now you need to go rescue them. After you do, you gain the abilities of the half-genie that you rescued. This will give you new instant transforms, just like Wonder Boy 3 on the Sega Master System. For example, you can transform into this green nuke guy who dashes across large areas and he can stick to and climb walls. Or you can transform into a drill to maneuver through sand areas. That's pretty fun. Once you find a fusion stone, the rescued girls will give you a magic power. To use this, you hold the dance button for a second and then press a direction. This can help you find hidden stuff like platforms to advance, or maybe restore some of your life and do other things. Lastly, this game uses a card system. Don't worry, it's not as bad as it sounds. Basically, it's like Castlevania Aria of Sorrow on the Game Boy Advance. Enemies sometimes drop these cards when you kill them. After you have enough of the same type of card, they can be equipped. They can do all sorts of different things, like make you crawl or climb faster, use less magic points, have more strength, have food items heal you more, and things like that. You have 3 spaces to equip different cards, so choose carefully. Of course, you'll be able to increase the number of hearts you have as well. Some of the dungeons are a touch Zelda-like here and there. For example, you may be trapped in a room until you defeat all of the enemies, or you'll need to find a key to unlock a door. There are also a few puzzle-type elements here and there, but they're not really difficult at all. But they're certainly not unwelcome. And of course, you've got your big, bad boss fights. There are multiple towns to visit in this one, and that adds some variety. The control is quite good. I like the control in RZ a little better, but probably only because I had just played that game, so I was more used to it. It's definitely better once you increase the speed of your hair whips. The game is longer than RZ, but it does cost $10 more digitally. You're looking at maybe 8 or 9 hours here. The graphics are excellent, with nice scrolling and tons of color. The enemies mostly look familiar if you've played any of the other games, but they look good too. The animation of everything is certainly nice. Speaking of that, there are some animated cutscenes here, usually for the boss introductions. They look pretty good and they're fun to watch. The music is also really nice. No Jake Kaufman this time though, curiously. That's okay, the 4 people who worked on the music here did a pretty damn good job. So is there anything to bitch about? Yes, but only very minor things. 1, there's some loading time that pops up even in the middle of some dungeon areas. This is by no means a deal breaker or anything, it just gets in the way of your groove sometimes. If you die and continue, it also has to load. The cutscenes, at least on my PlayStation 4 Pro, have some occasional audio dropouts.
Time to kick back and relax. Hey! This place is a paradise! We get to stay here for a whole week!
No other audio in the game is affected by this, and it seems weird that it does this, and I don't like it. Also, you can't jump down just like in RZ. Lastly, although the game shows you where you need to go next on the map, it can be rather vague on what you may need to do next sometimes. I get there and it's just this guy, nothing I can do to advance the situation. You might think this is a good thing though, because that means you have to explore more and more to figure it out. Still, this one is pretty fun, and if you've played any of the Shantae games before, you should know exactly what to expect. If you haven't, this one is a nice one to try. I did like RZ more though, despite it being much shorter. This is Transylvania Adventure of Simon Quest from Retroware. This game isn't out yet, much less finished, and right now the target is early to mid 2025. It'll be on PC, of course, but also likely Switch and PlayStation 5 at the very least, and they do plan on physical versions for those two platforms. I'm playing on an exciting Windows PC here. Anyway, everything you see here is subject to change, but let's look at what they have so far and judge them on it. As you can see, this is an ode to Castlevania II Simon's Quest. It has the towns, the day and night cycle, the enemies in the towns at night, collecting Dracula parts, and buying new weapons and sub-weapons. But it also has a few features from other Castlevania games as well. You play as Simon Quest, yes, that's his name, brother of Johnny, and he's having an adventure in Transylvania. The control is 100% old school Castlevania at this point. You whip candles and the like for hearts, but you also collect coins. Coins are for your currency. Hearts are for your sub-weapons, just like in every Castlevania game that's not Part 2. You can also collect double and triple icons to use your sub-weapons faster, but they only last for a limited time before they go away. There's also a level and experience system in place similar to the later Metroidvanias. It can definitely take a while to level up in this one. But like any good game that has a leveling system, you're able to find places here and there which make grinding a little easier. You just gotta have places like this. The game also features mansions. Outside of them, you can die all you want, though you will get sent back to the checkpoint. Inside of a mansion, you only have a limited number of lives to get through the entire thing. If you run out, you get sent back outside and you can re-enter if you want, starting the mansion over from scratch. Though you do get to keep your level, your experience earned, hearts, and money. Inside these mansions, you'll often find multiple routes. Sometimes you can't even traverse them properly until you come back later. You eventually get some new moves like a sliding attack, which is really fun. Just be careful with it because it's fast. Or how about whip swinging on certain points, just like Super Castlevania 4? Some of these whip jumps take timing that I haven't yet quite mastered. The graphics so far, of course, do their best to give you an NES aesthetic with limited colors and funky-looking tiled artwork. But they do break the 8-bit illusion with many layers of parallax scrolling as well as occasional lighting effects. I'm certainly not complaining about that, mind you. The sound and music also does its best to sound like it lives within the confines of the NES. Unfortunately, they didn't do much to break this illusion like offer stereo, but overlapping sounds never cause any of the music to cut out, so there's that. As for the music itself, it's alright. It does have some good moments actually, but I've been told that the music will mostly be redone. They're bringing in some heavy hitters according to Retroware. I don't know who those artists will be, but it'll be interesting to hear for sure. So, what would I improve if I was in charge? Well, first and foremost, I'd make the walking speed a little bit faster. Simon Quest moves very slow. It seems even slower than it does on the NES because the screen is wider. If he just went a little faster, it would feel like a breath of fresh air. I also wish the double and triple power-up for the sub-weapons lasted until I died. And then there are tiny little things that don't really matter at all, like why is the moon in front of the clouds here? Last I checked, that's not how the moon works. Ah well, this is shaping up to be a great Castlevania-like, and I really look forward to seeing how this one turns out in its final form. And there you go, more 2D games for modern platforms. There's a lot of good stuff in this episode, and I can definitely appreciate that Hyper Light Drifter was not just another side-scrolling platformer like every other game in this episode. Not that there's anything wrong with those, it's just like, I don't mind a little variety. Anyway, so what are some other good 2D games on modern platforms that you'd recommend? I'd be interested to hear about it, so let me know, and in the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack.
It's time for the Game Master!
Hey guys, are you having problems with your video gaming? You got your cables crossed? Or maybe you just can't beat that boss? Well, as always, the Game Master is here to help. And our first letter today comes from Timmy in East Virginia, and he writes, "Dear Game Master, I can't seem to get anywhere in Castlevania 4 on the Super Nintendo. What do I do?" Well, Timmy, I've got a trick that will get you well on your way. At the title screen, press the start button. Alright, up next is a letter by Ricky from Kansas, and he writes, "Dear Game Master, I just got the Sega channel from a thrift store, but I can't play any games on it. Is there a trick?" Yes, Ricky, there is, but you'll need a Game Genie to do it. Just hook up the Game Genie and enter the code LTAACR3EACJAAR6T. This will allow you to connect to the service and, as a bonus, give you 2 free points in the first sports game you choose to download. And our last letter today comes from Jimmy from North Virginia. "Dear Game Master, I can't seem to get past the Zone 5 maze and the Legendary Axe on the TurboGrafx 16. Any tips? Sorry, but this TV show caters only to what's super popular, and therefore we do not discuss the TurboGrafx 16. Go to hell, Jimmy." That's all the time the Game Master has this week. See you next time.